The 2026 World Cup is pricing out real fans. For decades, the World Cup has sold itself on a simple idea. Every 4 years, football belongs to everyone. It belongs to the kid watching in a crowded cafe in Cairo, the family saving for years in Buenos Aires, the supporters crossing continents to follow their country, the lifelong fans who build the atmosphere that makes the World Cup feel different from every other sporting event on Earth. But as the 2026 World Cup approaches, a difficult question is beginning to emerge. What happens when the biggest football tournament in history becomes too expensive for the very people who give it life? Because this isn't just a story about ticket prices. It's a story about who gets to experience football's greatest event, and who gets left outside. If you enjoy thoughtful football documentaries like this, subscribe to the channel. We spend a lot of time digging beneath the headlines to understand where football is really heading. The 2026 World Cup was always going to be different. For the first time ever, 48 teams. For the first time ever, 3 host countries. For the first time ever, 104 matches spread across North America. FIFA itself has described it as the biggest World Cup in history. On paper, that sounds like a celebration of football's growth. More countries, more matches, more fans. But almost as soon as tickets started appearing, another conversation began. A conversation about cost. Fans who had spent years dreaming about attending a World Cup suddenly found themselves doing calculations. Not just for tickets. For flights, hotels, transportation, food, visa expenses, multiple cities. And the numbers kept climbing. The irony was difficult to ignore. The biggest World Cup ever was supposed to bring more people in. Yet many supporters were starting to wonder whether they could afford to go at all. And that raises an uncomfortable question. How did we get here? To understand that, we need to look at what the World Cup has become. Historically, the tournament was never cheap. World Cups have always attracted huge demand. But there was usually a sense that ordinary supporters still had a realistic chance. The atmosphere in Germany in 2006 wasn't created by corporate guests. Neither was South Africa in 2010. Or Brazil in 2014. The soundtrack of those tournaments came from supporters who planned their lives around football. People who saved money for years. People who traveled because it meant something. The problem in 2026 is not simply that prices are rising. The concern is that the structure of the event itself may be changing. Reports throughout the ticketing process have highlighted growing frustration over pricing models, hospitality packages, and the increasing cost of attending matches. Critics argue that many supporters are being pushed toward an experience designed around higher-spending customers rather than traditional traveling fans. And that's where the story becomes bigger than ticket prices. Because FIFA is not just organizing a tournament. It's operating one of the most valuable sporting properties on Earth. The organization expects unprecedented revenues from this World Cup cycle, helped by expansion to 48 teams and 104 matches. From a business perspective, the logic is obvious. More matches create more inventory. More inventory creates more tickets. More tickets create more hospitality opportunities. More hospitality creates more revenue. Viewed through that lens, expansion looks like a financial masterstroke. But football supporters don't experience tournaments through balance sheets. They experience them through atmosphere, culture, community. And that is where concerns begin to emerge. Because football history repeatedly shows that atmosphere cannot simply be purchased. Think about some of the most memorable World Cup moments. The Mexican waves. The giant traveling supporter groups. The songs echoing through city centers. The spontaneous celebrations. Those experiences are created by fans. Not by premium lounges. Not by corporate packages. Not by luxury hospitality suites. And yet hospitality has become one of the major growth areas around World Cup 2026. Official packages offer premium seating, exclusive experiences, and luxury services designed for higher-spending customers. Now, to be fair, FIFA would argue that hospitality is not replacing ordinary supporters. The organization would point out that demand is extraordinary. More than 150 million ticket requests were reportedly submitted during one phase of sales. From that perspective, pricing reflects demand. Any event with millions of people competing for limited seats will naturally become expensive. And there is truth in that argument. Demand genuinely is enormous. But supporters are asking a different question. Not whether tickets should have value, but whether football's biggest event should increasingly resemble a luxury product. That distinction matters. Because once supporters begin feeling like customers first and fans second, something fundamental changes. And the evidence isn't only appearing in ticket discussions. Look at the wider experience surrounding the tournament. Fans have raised concerns about accommodation costs in host cities, travel costs between venues, and the practical reality of following a team across a continent-sized tournament. This is perhaps the least discussed challenge of all. The geography. Previous World Cups often allowed supporters to move relatively easily between matches. Russia was vast, but concentrated around one country. Qatar was exceptionally compact. Germany remains one of the easiest tournaments ever for traveling fans. The 2026 World Cup is something entirely different. A supporter could theoretically follow matches across cities separated by thousands of kilometers. From Vancouver to Mexico City. From Toronto to Dallas. From Los Angeles to New York. Travel becomes a major expense before a ticket is even purchased. And that changes who can realistically participate. Think about a supporter from Morocco, or Colombia, or Serbia, or South Korea. Even if they secure tickets, the surrounding costs can become overwhelming. Flights between host cities, hotels during peak demand, local transportation, meals, multiple weeks away from work. The ticket may no longer be the biggest expense. The World Cup itself becomes the expense. And that's where a deeper cultural question emerges. Who is the World Cup actually for? Because football has always claimed a unique identity. Unlike some global sporting events, it was never supposed to be exclusive. The World Cup mattered because it brought together people from radically different backgrounds. Students, workers, families, retirees, local supporters, international supporters. Everyone sharing the same space. But when costs rise across every layer of the experience, participation inevitably narrows. Not officially, not deliberately, but practically. The people most able to attend become the people most able to pay. And football supporters have seen this story before. Many domestic leagues have wrestled with similar tensions. The Premier League, La Liga, Serie A, Bundesliga clubs. Across Europe, supporters have spent years debating ticket prices, stadium atmospheres, and the commercialization of football culture. The World Cup was often viewed as something different, a temporary return to football's global roots. Now many fans fear it is moving in the same direction. And then another layer emerged. Because even some of the tournament's logistical decisions have generated criticism. Days before kickoff, FIFA faced backlash over restrictions affecting reusable water bottles inside stadiums, with supporter groups arguing the policy created unnecessary costs and inconvenience for fans attending matches in hot conditions. On its own, that might seem minor. But symbolism matters. Supporters notice patterns. They notice when costs accumulate. Ticket costs, travel costs, food costs, drink costs, accommodation costs. The issue is rarely one individual decision. The issue is what all those decisions feel like together. And increasingly, some supporters feel squeezed. If you're enjoying the documentary so far, leave a like. It helps more football fans find these conversations and keeps projects like this possible. But here's where the story becomes even more complicated. Because FIFA may actually face a problem that seems impossible at first glance. What happens if prices rise so high that demand begins to weaken? That sounds absurd for a World Cup. Yet reports have recently highlighted significant numbers of tickets appearing on resale platforms, with some prices falling as sellers struggled to find buyers. Think about what that means. Not empty demand, but misaligned demand. Millions of people want to attend, yet many cannot afford the available options. That's a very different problem. And it creates a paradox. A tournament can be incredibly popular while simultaneously becoming inaccessible. Both things can be true. The concern is not that people care less about the World Cup. The concern is that they care just as much as ever while finding it harder to participate. And if that trend continues, football faces an identity question. Because supporters are not simply consumers. They are part of the product itself. The chants, the color, the emotion, the atmosphere television audiences love. All of that comes from fans. Remove enough of those fans and something changes. The event may still be huge. It may still generate record revenue. It may still attract massive audiences. But it becomes a different kind of spectacle. More polished. More commercial. Potentially less authentic. And authenticity has always been football's greatest asset. Not technology. Not marketing. Not sponsorship. Authenticity. The feeling that what you're watching genuinely matters to the people inside the stadium. That is what turns matches into memories. That is what turns tournaments into history. That is what turns football into culture. As we look toward the future, perhaps the most important question is not whether the 2026 World Cup will be successful. By many measurements, it almost certainly will be. The bigger question is what kind of success football wants. Maximum revenue, maximum accessibility, or some balance between the two. Because every major football institution eventually faces the same challenge. Growth creates opportunities. But growth also creates trade-offs. And the World Cup is now confronting those trade-offs on a scale never seen before. So when people say the 2026 World Cup is pricing out real fans, they're not only talking about money. They're talking about identity. They're asking whether football's greatest tournament can remain a celebration of supporters while becoming an increasingly valuable global business. And that question will not disappear when the final whistle blows. It will follow football into the next World Cup. And the one after that. Because the future of football isn't decided only by who plays. It's also decided by who gets to be there. What happens in 2026 may tell us a lot about where the game is heading. And whether the people running football still understand the people who made it matter in the first place. The World Cup is coming. The question is who fills the seats.